This is the Washington Times front page for Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has been ousted by a handful of hard-right conservatives, throwing the chamber and its Republican leadership into chaos. Susan Ferricchio, Kerry Pickett, and Mallory Wilson report a handful of hardline conservatives voted with Democrats to remove McCarthy from the Speaker's chair. The 216 to 210 vote saw 8 Republicans joining all of the chamber's Democrats in voting for the motion. It's the first time the move, known as the motion to vacate, has succeeded in the history of the chamber. The House will be governed by a temporary speaker chosen from a list provided to the House clerk earlier this year by McCarthy for use in the event of an emergency. McCarthy announced he won't run to regain the gavel because he doesn't believe he can win a majority of votes on the House floor. The chamber is currently governed by a temporary speaker, Patrick McHenry of North Carolina, and his authority will be limited to presiding over an election for a new speaker. That will likely come next week, as the chamber sent its members home for the remainder of the week and is unable to conduct business without a speaker. The leading choices to replace McCarthy include Majority Leader Steve Scalise of Louisiana, Majority Whip Tom Emmer of Minnesota, Conference Chair Elise Stefanik of New York, and House Judiciary Committee Chair Jim Jordan of Ohio. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau fought for its life at the Supreme Court, arguing that there's nothing unusual about Congress giving the Wall Street regulatory agency the power to set its own budget without asking for money each year. Stephen Dinan and Alex Sawyer report the case raises questions about Congress's power of the purse and how much of that power lawmakers can give to the president. Some legal analysts say it could threaten the foundation of other agencies that don't go to Congress for annual funding, such as the Federal Reserve. Several justices seemed wary of going down that path and suggested the CFPB falls squarely within congressional funding schemes since the nation's founding. The agency was created after the 2008 Great Recession as a consumer-focused regulator of banks and other financial institutions. Pentagon officials have announced an overhaul of the military's approach to recruiting after the Army once again fell short of meeting its goal for the year. Mike Glenn reports Secretary of the Army Christine Wormuth and Chief of Staff General Randy George detailed sweeping changes to how the Army will identify and recruit talent. Among the first changes, replacing the officers on temporary assignment as recruiters with a new team of permanent, full-time talent acquisition specialists. The Army and other military services are grappling with the most challenging recruiting environment since the end of the draft 50 years ago. In the fiscal year that just ended, the Army brought in about 55,000 recruits, 10,000 short of its goal of 65,000. And finally, Susan Ferricchio looks at Green Party candidate Cornel West and the potential for him to pull votes away from President Biden in the 2024 presidential race. Polls show an increasing faction of voters are dissatisfied with the Republican and Democratic choices and are willing to consider third-party candidates. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Washington Times in any major podcast app. You can also find us on social media at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.